It turns out you have no problem with that because you can simply sit down and do all the cases and know if you do it or not, and then do it on exams. It'll also brought me a question with some numbers you'll see in the sample exam, how to figure out consumer equilibrium and so on and so forth. Again, it's the same basic ideas. Make sure you can do it. Because it's, demand theory. I don't really care much about demand theory. For me, the most important thing is this. Can you measure demand function in reality? Can you correct it for the money effect? That's all you need. All the rest, the theory, who cares? Okay, now, but the supply side, heavy duty. Because if you're a manager, you're running a company, you're trying to make decisions. We're now going to march like this. We're going to analyze the cost functions of firms. We're going to have a diagram that represents, or as output increases, the cost function of every firm that's producing a short run. It's going to be strange. It's like a diagram. You look and go, oh my God, this actually is a schematic of the cost functions of firms, the way they behave. So it's pretty impressive. We're going to do that. We're going to derive that from an understanding of the production function. So first of all, we're going to talk about production. Forget the cost per se, just how many resources it takes to produce this and so on, labor and capital. We'll analyze how production functions work. Then we'll use them. In fact, once we understand how they work, in the short run and the long run, I'll have to explain that. That's the hard part of everything. Once we understand that, we can have the cost functions almost immediately, and then we can have profit maximization almost immediately. And in the short run and the long run for competitive firms, then profit maximization in the short run and the long run for monopoly. This will take us like 3 weeks. What are we going to do? Yeah, 3 weeks. And it's just the same idea. These cost functions we're going to discuss today, we're going to use as the basis of everything we talk about next day, in the sense of profit maximization in the short run. Everything we talk about the following day, profit maximization in the long run. Everything we talk about the other day, next day, monopoly and monopoly. Everything we talk about the following day, comparison of monopoly, efficiency, and competition. And then everything we talk about externalities and flaws and the whole thing. So, after the end of the day, you need to be able to understand these cost functions and think about it. And you'll see that there's a very simple principle. So then, now we're going to get into this. The principle is what Marshall discovered is this, because we have a problem in the world. The classical economists thought essentially costs were always constant. That is, the more, if you produce one shoe, it's the same as you produce 500 shoes. They all cost the same, right? Because they didn't think in terms of, high-scale production or, what this all meant. They didn't think of whether the more you produce, the more it costs to produce an additional shoe, or the more you produce, the less it costs to produce an additional shoe. But by the 1850s or so, there's a few people who are thinking about that. But they're also getting confused because they think of computers. The more you produce, the cheaper it is to produce a computer. But the more you produce, for example, wheat, the more expensive it is to produce wheat on the same land, say. So why is it in some cases, the more you produce, the more expensive it is to produce another unit, for example, gasoline or oil in the world, but over time, the more you produce, the cheaper it is, right? So what Marshall showed is it's a difference between time periods. A short run, when capital is fixed, and by capital we mean machinery and buildings is completely fixed. But you can change all those things that are necessary to produce one more unit, labor, raw materials, fuel. But you can't change the machine, you can't change the building. Right? So that's the short run. In the long run, you can change the building or anything else you want. It turns out in the long run, usually costs fall. In the short run, costs always go up at some point. And that's like really simple. And it turns out, I'll explain, as I say to you, that thing I said before, and we've talked about it. How come it is, if you put a tax on cigarettes, the sellers can't actually sell those cigarettes at that price to the same number of consumers they had before, so the price has to fall. If you think about this, how can they sell their cigarettes cheaper? If they have fewer cigarettes, if selling fewer, how can you sell fewer cigarettes at a lower price? And again, I'd say there's no restaurant in this town you walk into tonight that your meal as the cost of your extra meal is more expensive than the cost of the meal before you. This seems crazy. It actually costs the restaurant less to produce meals for fewer people, in the sense of the additional meal, I'll have to explain this, than the additional meal for the last person. That's just completely off the wall. And you can spend your life trying to figure this out and not get there. So when we examine productivity, you're going to see where it is. Now I'm going to explain some things to you, because basically what we're trying to understand is we're going to explain why a supply curve in the short run looks like what you guys have seen. Getting there, at some point I'm going to ask you a very basic question. I don't want you to bring any economic knowledge in on this. I want you to bring your life in and answer the question correctly. And I think if you have any experience in life, I don't know if you have an opportunity to answer this question, you will understand the basic idea and the way you go. Okay? So let's get a few definitions. But you're going to be on for a thought soon. Short-run production and cost functions. We define a production function as the set of all maximum possible outputs from a given input or inputs that provide a technologically feasible way to produce the product or service. Remember, when I write this stuff, I have to write it fairly formally. All it means is a production function is, the combination of inputs, whatever they are, that are necessary to produce an output. So if I want to produce some cotton cloth, for example, I need raw cotton. Like supposing it's cotton cloth, I'm producing it from yarn. I need yarn, I need labor, I need fuel to run the machines, I need a machine to weave this stuff, I need a building so these people aren't rained on, I probably need some little carts so you can move the yarn in and move the cloth out, I need some lighting. These are all inputs into the production of cloth, right? So formally, that's all it is. We're assuming that when we do this, it's the technologically most feasible way. We're not talking about somebody, like for example, a weaver. You go down to these shows and they're artists and they weave things by themselves in their houses, and it's a piece of art and it costs $1,000 and you go to the Hudson Bay and get it for $100, right? We're not talking about inefficiency. We're talking about using the best technique. Okay, so I just put it this way, where this is a function, the output is a function of the inputs. The cotton yarn, the gasoline, the machine, the weaving machine, the weaver, the person who brings in the cotton yarn, the person who takes out the cotton cloth, right? Those are all the inputs. We simplify this by dividing the inputs into capital and labor to get. Output is a function of the inputs of labor and the inputs of capital. Now that should be pretty simple, but it's not quite as simple as you might imagine. Then we define this. A firm, we're talking about firms all the time, a business organization producing goods and services from resource inputs. So what a firm is that essential entity that takes inputs, capital and labor, puts them together to produce a commodity and sells the commodity, right? That's what a firm does. They put those things together. So business implies the assumption of profit maximization. This is very important. It's not a firm unless it's manufacturing, maximizing profit. Everybody? That's what that means. And the firm is the smallest unit connecting costs and output. So this action, the firm is the one that basically does the cost thing. Now it turns out, in all of economics, we call this atomism. I talked to you this before. We use the smallest entity. You might think the plant. So for example, General Motors has various plants. They've got a plant in Oshawa, they've got a plant, say, in Detroit, You might think the plant was the smallest entity. But the plant is not the smallest entity of production given our definition, because what is the difference between a plant and a firm? An essential difference. What does the plant not do that the firm does? Yeah.
It won't necessarily maximize profit.
Yeah, the plant doesn't maximize profit. Presumably people, because you're paying attention now, have been reading about Apple, having some non-employees, they got 50 employees in Ireland, and 70% of their profits come from this place in Ireland. Because everything runs through there. They pay their Ireland has very low tax laws, and so Ireland holds supposedly all the Apple patents, and Apple leases these patents to all the production units in the world who make no money whatsoever. All the profit goes to Ireland and the tax, right? So firms maximize profits, not plants. The firm is the smallest unit. And of course, when I ask you, what does the firm do? Why does the firm do? Why does the firm behave? In any way, shape, or form, your first answer is what? How do we figure out what the firm will do? We begin with that which you already know. Isn't that correct? You always begin with what you know. What do you know? Yes. You're jumping. You know that, but you don't know that yet. We haven't developed that. What do you know about a firm? Yeah. It maximizes profit, right? So whenever I say to you a question, you might go, I don't know the answer. The first thing you go is maximize profit. Aha! How do we do that? Right? So that's how you behave. Now it turns out, yes, maybe not all firms maximize profit, but in fact, most of them do. Oh, by the way, is the LCBO a firm, by the way? Huh? No. Is Ontario Hydro a firm? By this definition, it's Ontario Hydro firm. You don't know this? Ontario Hydro is a great institution in Ontario. It's screwed up by the Conservative government, but it's still an amazing institution. It is, for the most part, government-owned. It does not maximize profit. It mandates to minimize costs, not to maximize profit. So you should know that kind of thing. It's part of your legacy. Okay. So we say industry. An industry is all the firms that produce a particular commodity. So the shoe industry is all the firms that produce shoes. Right? The short run is the period in which one factor, one input is fixed. The long run, the period in which all factors are variable. Now I'm going to ask you a very simple question, because this is where the sense of this lies. Now I know I can go on College Street here, and there's photocopy shops there. And actually, if I went in most of those photocopy shops, I think they're a little bigger than this, but I'll say they're this size. No, maybe they're the size of this whole front here, okay? I know that's a couple on Spadina, there's a couple in college. This is the size of a typical photocopy shop, bringing the university. And they have a back room, and they have a counter, and they have all the rest of it. It would actually be half the size of this. But no matter. Now visualize a photocopy shop. You've all been in them, right? You know what they look like. Good. In terms of the university has a shop at the bottom of Sid Smith. And they churn out most of the photocopies that you need. So if I run exams, they produce them. And they produce a lot of stuff. So supposing the university decides to privatize their exam, like their paper production. They want you to bid for the right to produce for the university. Okay? Now, let's just think with this for a moment. Let's suppose, just for the sake of an argument, I don't know if these numbers make any sense at all in reality, that your photocopy shop that you guys can visualize can produce 10,000 copies a week, which you produce at around 2 cents a copy probably, and they charge 3 or 4 whatever they charge. Everybody? Good. Now the university comes to you and says, now look, we want you to put in a bid. We're going to give you all our photocopying, which is 100,000 copies a week. Not 10,000, 100,000. We want you to give us a bid. Now, this is the critical part. The bid might be, you've got to give us the bid in a week and be ready to start in 2 weeks. And you've got to think about what your price would be to do that. Or You need to start in a year. Give us your bid to start in a year. Now, what do you think? How would your bids differ? With your stupid little shop, what do you think you could produce? How much do you think it would cost you to produce per copy 100,000 sheets with your existing shop? Think about it. Because it has a bunch of photocopy machines that are about this size, right? And if you went in there and you try to give a price on the existing stuff in the existing room, first of all, you've got no room to put the sheets of paper. You can't store it. You'll have to rent someplace next door, and it might cost you a fortune. You've got nowhere to park, and your machines can't handle that kind of volume. They'd be working 24 hours a day, and they'd be breaking down, and there's no efficiencies. Flat out, I know. You run those machines 24 hours, they'll break totally. So it turns out it would probably cost you, you'd have to pay overtime, double time, people working in the middle of the night. It would cost you probably 5 cents a copy. You've got huge volume, but you've got this very small shop with these stupid little machines, right? Or if they gave you even 6 months. Now remember, tomorrow you can't get in a new machine. It takes time to order those things. You don't even have room in your shop for a machine. If you guys ever do, I used to get stuff photocopied by Office Depot, and they did it really cheap. This was like 10 years ago, at 2 cents. And then they just changed it to like 3.5 cents or something by changing the paper. But you went down there, they've got a machine on the Queen and Queen Street East somewhere, past Parliament. It's the size of a loaf. The thing is amazing. It literally is, it's way longer than this. It's twice the length of this thing. And it's huge. And they just put a thing in here like, and this was, and like 10 minutes later, like there's 500 exams, you know, just bang. The thing is unbelievable, right? Because it's an unbelievably efficient machine. And they've got all the place they need to store things. That's what you need. But you can't get that machine in your shop because you've already committed to paying rent on these other machines. And you're paying rent on your shop. But, so in the short run, you're screwed. It's 5 cents a copy and that's it. But 6 months down the road, you can go, okay, my lease is up in 6 months. My lease and my machines is up in 6 months. I'm gonna look around, I can find a place, I'm gonna find out, here's a place I can rent in 6 months for so much, it's way bigger, but it's cheaper per square foot. I can rent this huge machine, I can produce for 1 cent a copy. Everybody? The short run and the long run, it's a huge distinction. The long run allows you to change your machinery in your building. The short run, you can't do that. You can produce everything you want. You can have all the labor you want, all the fuel you want, all the raw materials you want, but you can't change your machinery and equipment. Okay? So short run, long run, that's the secret. That's the basic secret of this, well, one of the secrets of it before. Okay, now, so I'd say that, a little bit more here. Variable inputs are the inputs that vary with each additional quantity you're developing. Now this again took some thinking. You know, when you do the history of thought, people didn't have this in like 1750 for sure. Adam Smith doesn't have this, for example, 1776. I think Ricardo was the first to do something like this in 1819. But it turns out, for 2,500 years of discussing economics, before Ricardo, nobody figured out that your inputs are different. One of them is variable, that every single unit you produce, if I'm producing, for example, a photocopy, to produce one extra copy, I need a piece of blank paper. I need some electricity to run the machine, or gasoline, or whatever the machine is running on, and I need someone to turn the switch on. But I don't need a new machine. The old machine can produce 100,000 copies. The building will last for 10 years. But if I'm going to produce one more piece of paper, one more photocopy, what do I need? That's a variable input. A fixed input is if you don't need it to produce one more unit. Then it's called a fixed input. Now another way that they used to call it variable, Ricardo called variable, circulating, in the sense that when the variable in this sense, when it's circulating, when I spend money on my labor and my fuel and my paper, when I sell that to somebody, like for whatever amount that I sell that copy for, I expect to get back all of that expense on my labor, my fuel, and my raw materials, right? But I don't expect to get back the whole value of my machine. I don't go to get, you go to get something photocopied, and the person says, well, it's going to cost you like $575,000. Well, why is that? Because you have to pay for the machine that produced your one copy. No, that's not right, right? So this package, now I get to the nitty gritty. I sold you this package, it cost me like $9.55 or something like that. But what were my costs for this package? I charged you all it cost me for the photocopy copies. But I didn't charge you for the fact that I wrote it all, not one penny, but that's part of my job. So I didn't worry about that. But I didn't charge the fact that it took me time to go there, pick it up, talk to the people, pay, bring it here, cart it in and out, use my car, use gasoline, all that. I didn't charge her for the fact that I might have had some extras. And what would I do with those? In fact, I had some extras. What would I do with those? I don't just say, hey guys, I have some left over, you guys got all chipped in and I do all that. That doesn't happen. So in terms of when you think of costs, you got to figure out all the costs, not only the cost of it costs this much to photocopy, but somebody had to take it there. And oh, by the way, I had to print it myself. I had to print the original copy, do that whole thing. So if you add all this up, it's way over $10. And when you're in business, you must charge every penny of your costs. Otherwise, in the long run, you get run down. Your car, your vehicle breaks down, and you never collected anything to replace its depreciation. You didn't collect anything for the gasoline. You didn't collect anything for your time. You ran around at the end of the day, hey, I sold all these copies for $10. And guess what? I spent a whole day at it, and I don't have anything to eat because I don't have any money to buy anything, right? So costs, you got to think about every cost, and that's what we're doing. But you divide them into variable, and as I say, the variable cost, I got my variable cost down. This is what I laid out. I got it back, but I didn't get any of my fixed costs. My car, okay, ready? So, there, that's the thing. Now it turns out, variable inputs, we're going to equate with labor. We shouldn't, because labor is just one of the variable inputs, and the other ones, fuel and raw materials, are themselves actually capital. But we're going to say labor covers all the variable inputs, and capital covers all the fixed inputs, including the land. Everybody? So, fixed inputs, variable inputs. L for variable, K for labor. Now we're going to discuss short-run production functions. And here, you're going to get a chance to shine and tell me whether you've ever done any work in your whole life. This is what I find out. I want to find out, okay? I want to find out if you've ever done anything in your life. So think carefully about your answer from your own experience. Because normally I'll ask this question and most of the students will get the wrong, will say something wrong, and I'll just say to them, oh my God, have you ever done anything? Why did you give me that? Okay, this is the cotton factory. Everybody pay attention to exactly what this is. Capital is fixed. This is the short run. This over here, what we're going to do is we're going to take raw cotton. It's going to come in that door. We're going to load it up here. This is a spinning machine. It's not an old style like Cinderella spinning machine. It's a modern spinning machine. It's going to spin up yarn. And then this thing here is a weaving machine of the most advanced nature. And then we're going to weave the yarn in the cloth right here. And then over here, this whole bunch of junk over here are bleaching vats. We're going to bleach the cotton that comes out gray into white cotton cloth. And we're going to pile it up here at the end of the day. Okay? Now, this is it. Each of you must consider him or herself as exactly equal in ability, intelligence, energy as every other person in the class. This is important. So you're interchangeable. I'm going to hire one person. I'm going to hire you first. What's your name, sir? Alina. I'm hiring Alina. Now, Alina's a good worker. She's going to work 8 hours. person. I'm going to tell her what to do and I'm going to go away. She's going to work flat out. At the end of the day, spinning, weaving, bleaching, she has 10 yards of completed cotton cloth. All right, everybody? Good. Then we're going to hire you. Which one is right? Bill. I'm going to hire Bill. He's the second person. He's just like her. They're not going to fool around, take cigarette breaks, talk about nothingness. They're just going to work flat out. Now here's the question for you guys. I want you to think about it. Really importantly. Draw upon the wealth of your experience because you know the answer. Despite the fact that you like it to be the wrong answer, you actually know the right answer. When Bill works with Alina, and they work together for 8 hours, and I come back at the end of the day, what do I find? Twice as much cloth, that is 20 yards, less than twice as much cloth, or more than twice as much cloth. And I want you to tell me the answer in this circumstance. What is the answer? No, I'm going to get you to vote. You've all got 30 seconds to figure out if you're all going to vote. Or I'm going to mock you. You there. Why don't you put up your hand there? Afraid? Type of thing. So let's see what you're made of. By the way, this is a secret, not of everything, that's marginal cost, marginal revenue. But this is the secret of marginal cost, part of the overall secret. Right? This simple idea, if you can figure this out from your own experience, we're done. Practically, all the rest streams off. Okay, how many say? Think carefully now, very, very carefully. With the life you've led, all the things you've done in your life, do these two people produce exactly twice as much? How many say that? Go ahead. All right, not a single person. Good enough. How many produce less than twice as much? Hands up. Okay, fair enough. How many would you say? We're roughly half the class. How many produce more than twice as much? Okay, I want you to say more than twice as much as high as you possibly can, because I can count you. How many say more than twice as much? Hands up high. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the rest of you either say less than twice as much or twice as much. That is a logical conclusion, is it not? Only 4 people in this class said more than twice as much. And my question to you is this. Have you guys never done any work in your life? I mean, really, are you kidding me? Do you think if you worked with me that the two of us couldn't do twice as much as one of us in this job? Are you joking? If we were raking leaves, the two of us couldn't rake more than twice as many leaves as me all by myself. I'd have to rake the leaves, I'd have to hold the garbage up by myself, I'd have to load it, I'd go to the... Two of us will be more efficient than one. If we were washing dishes, if we were putting up prom decorations, two of us will do more than twice as much as one. And in this case, two will do more than twice as much as one. And you all should know that. Have you never worked with another person? This is always the answer I get, by the way, in first year and second year and third year, because somehow, A, they forget what they learned in first year, and B, I guess they never did the work, you know? Have you ever worked in a restaurant? Have you done any work in your life at all? Have you never ever done a human being? Where the two of you were able to do twice as much as one of you, I'm just wondering, where does the answer come from? It doesn't come from your experience. Now it turns out, Adam Smith saved the day. Why is this? Why is it that the second person will end up with, say, 30 yards of cloth and not 20? Why? Explain this to me. Why